Welcome to HortTube. My name is John Putnam. This is the January garden checklist video. We do one of these each month, and it's just basically a list of things that we're doing here in our Raleigh, North Carolina garden, Zone 8A. You may be in a colder area, and a lot of these things I'll be talking about in this video you'd be doing later in the season if your ground was frozen. But we can continue to plant here in where we are. Just the ground never really freezes. We'll get nights where it's well below freezing, but it only gives us a little bit of crust of ice on top of the soil, but rarely ever freezes it very deep at all. So we can continue to work in the ground here. And any plants that are kind of acclimated to our area, we will continue to plant through the winter. So as long as it's well hardy in my area, maybe I'll be picking things like, again, I'm in zone 8A or 7B. If it's hardy in like zone 6 and it's acclimated to the outside, I'm definitely putting it in the ground in January. It's better off in the ground than it is in the container. So something like this Abelia, this is zone 6 to 10 hardy. In this container above the ground, we may get here in early January several nights that can freeze this container solid for several days, putting this plant in far more danger in this container than it would in the ground, where it's never going to freeze more than an inch or two deep here. I'm thinking through that. We have a lot of things in containers out here right now. Some of them are for projects later in the season, so we're going to have to do some protection on some things. We'll be doing some planting of shrubs, again, that are acclimated in my area. And by acclimated, I mean we have them outside out here. We're putting minor frost and freezes on them. We just unboxed them, and they were from South Alabama. So they had not experienced as much cold as we had here. So what I'm doing right now is just trying to get them caught up with a few freezes, okay? So I'm leaving them out on some minor freezing nights to get them to stop growing, slow down, go to sleep, and then I can stick them in the ground. So that's my thought process. If it is a marginal thing, and I've got an oleander right here, this is gonna be a marginal plant in my area. It's zone 8 hardy, but barely. And so that's an issue for me, where in January, I'm not gonna put this plant in the ground. I would prefer that this plant go in the ground after our last frost. Our average last frost date here is around April 15th. So I'm gonna keep this one safe, keep the pot from freezing solid like I just talked about, bring it in on nights, and that could be a garage or whatever, until about April 15th or a little after. And then I put it in the ground, and that gives it a whole growing season to get really established, get roots under it, get a year of growing under it before it takes its first winter. And that, you'll have much more success doing that. If I stick this thing in the ground in January, I'm really setting it up to start off with a significant, amount of cold damage potentially that then it's got to grow out of all season. And then it goes into the winter, not established, and it does it again and again and again. So that's our thoughts that's woody shrubs. Now, you can go to garden centers right now and you're going to see potentially there's bare root roses, bare root fruit trees. You can order these things online right now. And so any of those bare root plants you can order, and most of them, as long as they're hardy in your area and they haven't leafed out or something like that, you can go ahead and put those things in the ground. I don't plant, I don't talk about this frequently, I don't typically plant grasses during the winter time and like marginal perennials, because when I dig a hole right now, about 3 weeks ago it was super dry here. Since then we've probably had close to 10 inches of rain over the course of 3 weekends. It's just been absolutely, it's all or nothing right now, all or nothing. If I dig a hole right now and put something in that has a tendency to potentially get root rot, that doesn't like to be wet, it's definitely going to be wet in that soil. So I think that's better off above the ground in containers. One thing I'll say is a lot of people store plants. They'll take a plant like that oleander and they'll stick it in the garage, for the whole, and think they're just going to leave it in there for the whole winter. We've just had almost a week here since we've had a freeze. Probably 4 to 5 nights since we've had a freeze. This plant's much better off outside on a rainy 60-degree day than it is in your garage in low light. So if there are days, if you've got plants stored, inside, in a garage, whatever, they would be better off outside on days you can take them out where it's not below freezing. So just throwing that out there, that we'll hustle some plants in and out here and there because they are better off outside if they can be. you know, with the humidity and the sunlight and all those kinds of things. The other thing that if you've got any bulbs and they're still in good shape, you can absolutely still put them in the ground. I'm handling this bag of hyacinths. I will not touch my face after this. Hyacinths can be, you know, cause some itchy skin. I just realized I did that. And then I'm gonna forget about it and touch my face. Have very itchy eyes soon enough. Any bulbs that are still in good shape can still go in the ground in January. Maybe you've got some in the refrigerator that you've been cold treating, tulips, something like that. Those things can still go in the ground. And in fact, as I'm shooting this on a Thursday morning, Friday morning, we were putting a bunch of bulbs in the ground that we haven't planted yet. So that if they're still available. One other thing you may find at the garden centers is that there may still be some pansies, dianthus, snapdragons, some of the cool season flowering annuals if they're hardy in your area. Again, snapdragons can actually last all year long. Here in the summer though, for us, the pansies and the snapdragons and the dianthus probably need a little bit of summer shade in order to really perform well if we were leaving them through summer, but we just treat them as winter annuals. Rabbits have been pruning these for me, so we've got to spray some sort of mint spray or something over them to get the rabbits to stop pruning the pansies. Another thing you'll find, maybe if you're living in a southern area, is there's plants that are flowering this time of year. We've got Mahonia in full flower here in the garden. We've got Camellia sasanquas that are just finishing up and Camellia japonicas that are just getting started. We were over at the J.C. Ralston Arboretum a couple days ago, and there's an incredible amount. You get these, again, a week of 60-degree temperatures, and you know, there's a lot of things that can bloom here in our area. There's a Mahonia here that we're excited about called Silver Caress. It's an upcoming release from the Southern Living Plant Collection, and there's flowers coming on it. Bees absolutely love these Mahonias on these warm, kind of abnormal winter warm days that we get. Get some cold on it, it'll slow it down. Get some warmth on it, it'll start to come back out. Our osmanthus is blooming again right now. So there's a lot of examples. And then fruit plants, you know, this time of year in January, you know, something like this blueberry, which is dormant right now, but the flower buds are all over it for next year. And then bare root fruit trees. You may find bare root blackberries, raspberries, all kinds of, you know, different fruit plants available this time of year. Normally, this time of year, we would have put in a fall garden. After our summer vegetable garden was done, we would have put in whatever greens, lettuce, collards, kale, lots of different greens, and broccoli, cauliflower, those kinds of things. Broccoli, cauliflower would have been done by now, but some of our greens would have still been growing. We haven't had nights cold enough to really kill them if I'd offered them any protection whatsoever. And I still see a few people in the neighborhood with their collards and kale and things still looking great. What they're doing is just putting a frost protection blanket on it on these nights that go down into the middle 20s. That's about as cold as we've gotten so far. And they still look absolutely fantastic. We did not do a fall crop. This is our holding area for a bunch of container plants that we had while we went on the road. We did cover the ground, so the ground is protected here for the winter time. We put down some pine bark soil conditioner, but any kind of wood chips, leaves, anything like that. Basically just trying to keep the weeds from taking over the vegetable garden for the winter and keep the soil life that we've been building alive and warm and moist during the winter time. This would be the time of year if we were going to be using this space for a early spring garden where, again, we were going to do broccoli and cauliflower and peas and lettuce and all those kinds of things. We'd be starting those seeds right now. This space is kind of going to be used until mid-April, so we're not going to be doing that this year, but we are going to be doing some lettuce in bowls. So we're going to be starting the seed, and our lettuce will basically be mobile this spring. If you want to see that in video content, let me know down below this video. If not, that's, you know, we're going to be starting seed in the next week or two, again, that will end up in bowls. And then it'll be sometime around the 1st of March, though, before we start our summer vegetable seeding. And that'll be done in-house, and normally we show that in content during the season. Then this stuff's going to end up back in containers or in other landscape projects, and our vegetable garden will go in later on. So we're kind of skipping a step, but for those of you, if you have available space, January is a great time of year to be starting some of those cool season vegetables that you can put in the ground during the month of February. You need to be able to protect them, depending on how cold it's going to be outside. Once they go in the ground, they're vulnerable to hard freezes. These things will take mild freezes, but not really, really hard freezes, things down in the low 20s and teens. If you can offer them some protection, we can grow things almost year round here. One thing we're definitely doing in January, and a lot of people are doing in January, is continuing to manage leaves. We have a very large oak back here that is finally finished. The rain was very helpful in pulling off the last of the leaves off of it. We leave the leaves on most places on this garden. We will cut some of them up and then make them smaller. We'll move some leaves around if they're too deep in places. I don't want them, crazy deep, so we'll move them to places that don't have leaves, or again, reduce the size of them by grinding them up in some way with a lawnmower or whatever. I do rake the paths back here to keep those differentiated from the beds. Eventually, sometime by late January, we'll get slightly warmer nights and the robins will start nesting. And when they do, they'll go through these leaves and just absolutely clean out anything that's not beneficial back here. Or even some of the beneficial things too, the worms and things. They just come through here and just constantly clean it out. The other thing we're definitely managing is winter weeds. We've got some creeping Charlie in the alley back here behind me. There's some creeping Charlie that's always trying to creep in here. Got a neighbor that has some too, trying to creep the other way. So we're trying to make sure those things don't invade this space. We've always got to fight with ivy back here and ligustrum seedlings, and just, we don't have as many weeds as we originally had, but we definitely have some. And so we're trying to manage those. If you haven't mulched, if you've got bare ground, I would definitely encourage you to mulch it in some way. And that mulch can be, again, it can be leaves, it can be some sort of bagged mulch that you get from wherever, or, maybe if you have a local landscape yard of some kind, whatever. Get the ground covered with some sort of mulch. Prevent some of these winter weeds from taking over your garden, so that, let's say you're not following any of these things I'm talking about right now because it's too cold outside and you're going to be doing them later. You wouldn't want to, the middle of April as you're coming out to do all these things to be overrun with weeds, right? So at least keep from losing control of it is a good idea. We're going to be doing a lot of transplanting during the month of January. There'll be several transplant videos. Some things I'm just tearing out, and we'll just be, how to tear something completely out of the ground using, some sort of piece of equipment. And then the next thing will be how to delicately move something from point A to point B. So those videos will be during January. We're definitely going to be playing some musical chairs with some pieces in this garden in January. In our area is a great time of year to be doing that. If you're in colder areas, you would want to wait for the ground to thaw out some. Also, if you're in colder areas, make sure you're going out potentially. Snow is a great insulator, but if don't cover your plants before you get snow, because the weight of the snow can be a problem. So back when I had the nursery all those years, if we had snow predicted, we'd actually take our covers off, allow that snow to fall, and then throw our covers back over top of the snow, because the weight of the snow can be problematic. Also, it can be problematic if you have branches on weeping trees and things like that. You probably want to go out and shake the snow off of them occasionally if you get in heavy, heavy snow. But we do think about snow. The weight of snow can be an issue. One piece of maintenance we definitely do here in January, or while the trees and shrubs are dormant, is something like this weeping redbud. I've had it staked, and I will continue to have it staked for some period of time. But I've got this plastic tie on it, and I go in here and I'll put a new tie in a different spot and cut that one off to make sure it's not doing any damage to the tree. If the tree needs any additional staking, I'll work on that right now. Our front service berry in the front garden, it definitely has a little bit of a lean on it. I'd like to correct it while I still can. So that's something I'm looking at. Also, while this tree is bare, I can see that I have a ton of crossing branches on it that are going to be rubbing on one another. I need to go in here and thin this out just a little bit. It's just a lot. This is a whole heck of a lot of limbs. This thing leaves out and it hits the ground immediately, and then I limb it up. And every time I limb it up, I create additional branching in here. That additional branching is now again starting to cross all over the place. So I need to go in here and just thin it out a bit. So it's a good time of year to do that because I can see into the plant. Also, plants your fruit trees. If you have fruit trees, you may, check with your extension agent, find out when it's the best time to be pruning apples and pears and peaches and all those kinds of things. But this is the time of year that's done, typically. But you may, again, your local area may be different, on different plants. Sometime toward the end of January, I'm going to get in here and really start doing some pruning on some things. And so sometime between late January right through early March is when I'll do a lot of the pruning. I won't prune the early season flowering shrubs at all because I'd be taking flowers off. But there are a lot of things out here that can be pruned. Things like butterfly bushes toward the end of January. Some of our grasses we want to get cut back before the new growth starts on them. So that may be February when that's done, but certainly sometime we'll be thinking about it during the month of January, and those videos will be going up on the channel. A few other things you'll see us prune during the month of January: conifers. If we had any large conifers out here that needed any pruning at all, I do that in January. Roses, dead limbs. While a plant is kind of open or exposed, you may be able to see that you got some dead limbs in it. Those things will need to be removed during the winter time. We're going to be size controlling some things, like hard pruning some things. I'll probably wait a little bit later on that kind of hard pruning than January, but there are several things out here that really need that kind of pruning. Fertilizing, I think it's a little too early in January, and we use organic fertilizer, which just feeds the soil microbes, and then they feed the plants, and those things are kind of asleep when it's cold outside typically, so the fertilizer is not going to do a whole lot of good anyway. It'll be sometime in February or March when I fertilize everything out here. I do have some new pansies planted, and so that might be something I would fertilize if I still had annual things planted out here, including maybe something in the vegetable garden. If I still had collards or kale or something like that, I might fertilize those things. And I'm trying to get some snapdragons, dianthus, if I was trying to get some color out of those things during the winter. And then just general garden cleanup. It's nice outside, right? I'm in, it's probably cold, much more cold in other areas as you're watching this. But in our area, these 55 to 60 degree afternoons are so much easier to think about doing patio construction and fence construction and lifting pots and moving things around than it is when it's 90 some degrees out here. So we will take this opportunity on drier days to get out here and do some of the heavy lifting that needs to be done it's just January's just a good month for that. It's easier to put on, clothes. You can't take enough clothes off here in the summertime, to make it comfortable working outside. Watering, I would have said 3 or 4 weeks ago I was going to be watering all winter. We finally gotten enough rain that I don't need to be doing any ongoing watering. I'll think about it if we happen to go some period of time, but we've had like 10 inches of rain in 2.5 weeks. I think because of the short days, more cloud covered days, that we probably wouldn't have to do any winter watering, but it's certainly not out of the question that some of these container plants that we've collected here for projects later in the season, some of those temporary planted things I have over in the garden, something maybe that was newer planted in the fall, if you've put in a big project here in the fall, those are the things you would think about. The things that have been in the ground for more than a year, I probably wouldn't have to think about the rest of this winter. One thing Steph and I are working hard on right now is planning, and I think a lot of you in January, that's probably the main thing you'd be doing out in the garden, is thinking about and planning and dreaming about things to do later on. We have just several things that need to be redone in this garden overall, where things are too tightly planted. Also, we're thinking about, we have some bulbs going in the ground. Again, I'm shooting a bulb video tomorrow morning. We're making sure we're documenting where those things are going in the ground. Just some sort of overall, it doesn't have to be any kind of formal plan. It doesn't have to look, you don't have to be an artist to do this, but some sort of just rough drawing of your garden space. You can go on Google Maps or something like that and look at a satellite view, of your property and print it, and then, do a little drawing on it, blow it up a bit or whatever you do. It's just, it doesn't have to be formal, but making sure you're keeping track of where you're planting perennials that go dormant in the winter so you're not damaging them later, going, the things that you've been dreaming about adding to your garden, thinking about where you could place them, the winter sun, seeing the difference between where it's sunny in the winter time versus sunny in the summertime. Those things can be, big time differences. Also in the winter, seeing how wet a place is. because sometimes your seasonal wet dry spaces can be a serious issue. Like you plant something in the summer and it was just bone dry, and then you go over there this time of year and it's really, really wet, and while the plant's not growing and while the plant's kind of dormant, it could be damaged by that water. We just ordered seed. We're a little late. Normally we order our seed a little earlier in the fall, so that's seed for our vegetable garden, flower seeds, anything we want to try from seed. We're fairly experimental with seed, so I'll try all kinds of things. Year to year, we'll buy different things to try that we haven't tried before. Sometimes sometimes you're going to be successful, sometimes you're not. Usually, luckily, with seed, it's not such an expensive thing. You're not experimenting with $100 at the time. You're experimenting with $4 at the time or $5 at the time. Usually, you can find some sort of discount code, on most of the seed companies for free freight, or 10% discount or 20% discount for ordering the first time, that kind of thing. I always do that as I'm ordering seeds. One other thing on garden planning is visiting other gardens. I say this every month. I can't say this enough. I was just over at the Ralston a couple days ago. I'm actually going to be doing another video with Mark Wethington over at the Ralston about visiting gardens in the off season. There's so many things over there to see. So many brightly colored conifers in the wintertime that are much more heat tolerant than you might think. You'll find things that are in flower. You'll find things that have winter, or we have no leaves, but they're incredibly interesting in the wintertime. You might find something like this golden Oakland holly here. Look how brightly colored this is in the wintertime. It's getting tons of winter sun, so it's really showing off. Right now it's got a few leaves in it, but just an absolutely beautiful plant. Tools are another thing we think about this time of year. If you need to change the oil in your mower and clean up any tools, maybe purchase a few tools for the winter time, this is the time of year to do that. We've got a couple videos on the channel for my favorite tools that you can go back and take a look at. Cleaning out your garden shed, just taking advantage of the fact that it's just much easier to work outside in these types of temperatures. And we try to invite birds into this garden. So, thinking about feeding birds, thinking about while it's frozen outside that they may not have water available, adding water, giving them water. They are beneficial to the garden, and they're almost needed, to have a healthy garden. Like I say, I have those robins come through here. You'd think leaving all these leaves would cause insect problems, but the robins just absolutely take care of that. Without any problem. And I kind of enjoy listening to them. They will literally flip every one of these leaves over multiple times during the wintertime. I think as this video goes up, there's like 2 more days of a $60 discount on my Learn to Garden video series. It's over on my website, HortTube.com. It's a series of videos basically teaching gardening, and each of those videos has all the other videos that have been put up on the channel that relate to that video. So if I put up a pruning video over there, it has lots of other pruning videos to teach you pruning attached to that. The videos that are actually on the channel are commercial free, and you buy it, you own it, and I'm putting up content for another year on it, so it's going to continue to develop. Thank you to any folks out there who have purchased it, especially during the month of December. There have been quite a few of you, and I really appreciate it. And there's 2 more days left on that discount before that goes away. So thank you very much for watching, following along with the channel, and good luck in your January garden.